how much ETH would you have to stake today to be able to retire right now? In this video, we're going to break that down as well as look at some projections of how much staked ETH you would need to be able to retire by 2025 and also 2030. For starters, what is the target? How much money would somebody need to be able to retire today off of staked ETH? Well, according to the last census data, the median household income in the US was just over $70,000. So if we bump that up to say $75,000 and then maybe add a margin of error of an additional $25,000 because we don't necessarily want to be just eking by, but have a decent living. So let's say that the target to be able to retire today is to have $100,000 in household income, which is well above the median right now. It would definitely be possible to live off of that amount, and also probably possible to live off of much less if you lived in a place that was cheaper, either within the US or somewhere else around the world. For example, living in somewhere like South America or Southeast Asia, 100,000 US dollars per year in staking income would go a long way. So how much ETH would you have to have staked today to be able to earn $100,000 per year income from that? Let's take a look. But also keep in mind that since the price of ETH fluctuates quite a bit, the numbers that we're looking at today could drastically change. For example, if the price doubles over the next few months or year or so, then the amount of staked ETH that you would need to retire would go significantly down. Of course, that also works in the opposite direction. But at today's prices, this is what we're looking at. As of right now, the time of this recording, the price per ETH is around $1,734 US, and the staking yield is hovering around 4.3% per year. And I'm taking that from this right here, which is showing that the average staking yield, there's different ways that you can do it, but we're just looking right now at staking pools, which is basically the lowest barrier to entry and the easiest way that somebody can stake their ETH by staking it with something like Lido or Rocket Pool. And through that right now, you can earn around 4.3%. Although this does fluctuate based on a couple of things, including the demand on the network and also the number of people that are staking. The higher the demand, the higher the rewards, but also the greater the number of people that are staking their ETH, the lower the rewards. And we can look at this chart here to see the trend in staking yield since November of last year. And it has hovered somewhere around 4 to 5% for the vast majority of the past year. Although at some points it can spike if there's a huge demand. For example, back in May, the staking yield spiked to 8.3% at the beginning of May because there was a lot of demand on the network because a lot of people were trading coins, basically. And so right now we're going through a bear market. Network demand is much lower than it has been previously. Gas prices are lower. But if we go into another bull market, it is highly likely that there's going to be more demand on the network and that the staking yield will also go up. Anyways, currently 4.3% is the staking yield, which means that per staked ETH, you could earn around 75 US dollars per year right now. And if our income target for the year is 100,000 US dollars, that means that we would currently need 1,341 staked ETH to be able to retire right now, which obviously is quite a lot. And if you were going to buy that at today's market prices, that would cost around $2.3 million. So basically with these numbers, there's no way to retire off of Ethereum staking alone today unless you're already very wealthy in the crypto space. But what if we project this out to 2025 or to 2030? How much staked ETH would you need to have at those time points to be able to retire? And do we have enough time to actually leverage the staking yield over the next, let's say, 3 to 7 years and to generate enough returns to be able to actually reach a point where it's possible to retire? So for 2025, I'm going to project the price of Ethereum by using a couple of different valuation models. And I've got the links to these sources in the spreadsheet here, which I'll also post a link to below the video here today. But let's have a base case and a bull case for 2025 and for 2030 so that we can see, depending on the price of ETH and the staking yield, how much ETH would we have to stake to be able to retire then. Also, we're going to adjust the income target to account for inflation, and I'm going to use a 5% per year figure between now and 2025, but also between now and 2030, which is hopefully a little bit higher than what the real inflation is going to be, but let's use that just to be on the safe side. So based on that, then the income target for 2025 would be around $110,000 per year. Now, in the base case, I'm using a price target of 3,000 per ETH, which is slightly more than 2x from what it is now. And in the bull case for 2025, I'm using a price target of 5,000 per ETH, which is somewhere around 3x from the price now. Now, the valuation sources that I'm using for these, I've got linked down here. So for example, this article here from capital.com contains a couple of different price predictions from different industry people, all of which are well above the $3,000 figure, and most of which are above the $5,000 figure. And this article from Forbes has similar types of predictions, as well as this article from capex.com. And I know projecting price predictions for something like Ethereum over the next few years is really like throwing darts at a dartboard, but if we just use these figures for the purposes of this thought experiment, just to see, what it might actually take, I think we'll get some interesting results. So in the base case, if the price per ETH is 3,000 in 2025 and the staking rewards are 5%, and I've bumped it up a little bit from the current 4.3%, because I think we're hovering right now at more or less what the low point for staking yield will be. We're in the absolute doldrums of a bear market. There's practically no network demand right now. And if we go into a new bull market, which would be required to see these kinds of upward movements in the price that we're using for the base case and the bull case here, then we would necessarily have an increased demand on the network, and then probably an also increased staking yield. So if we're using a 5% staking reward, that means that the income per staked ETH will be around $150 in the base case, and in the bull case, $250 per year. And with those figures and our income target, in the base case, we would need 735 staked Ethereum to be able to retire by 2025, purely off of the staking income alone, and in the bull case, 441 ETH staked to be able to retire off of that staking yield. And at today's prices, the cost to buy that much ETH would be 1.2 million or about $760,000 respectively. But the interesting thing about this is that the longer the time horizon for retiring off of staking yield, the longer we have to be able to actually leverage staked ETH into a snowball effect. So let's say that somebody bought 50 ETH today and then staked that for 2 years to 2025. That would be 55 ETH by the time they were actually looking to retire. And of course, the longer the time horizon, the better the snowball effect would be. So if we bought 50 ETH today and staked that for 7 years, assuming a 5% staking yield over that period, then that would be 70 ETH by 2030. So it is possible to accumulate over time as opposed to having to just buy all of it upfront in one fell swoop. Now, speaking about 2030, let's check out the base case and the bull case for that year and see how much ETH we would have to stake to be able to retire off of the yield then. Now, again, for the valuation models, I've put links down below here. For example, this price prediction from Van Eck, which is actually relatively new from May 2023, they're predicting that ETH could be around 12,000 by 2030, but there's other predictions that are much more bullish than that. For example, this one from Cointree suggesting that it could be Australian dollars 67,000, which is probably closer to about 50K US by 2030. And ARK Invest in their Big Ideas 2023 is suggesting that the price per ETH by 2030 could be somewhere around $100,000, which is absolutely insane. Now, taking all of this with a grain of salt, I've decided to use $15,000 for the base case projection and $50,000 for the bull case projection. And again, I've applied a 5% staking yield, which I do think might be on the conservative side. But based on these figures, by 2030 then, one staked ETH could be earning around 750 US per year in the base case, and in the bull case, it could be earning around 2,500 per year. Now, the income target at that point with the 5% per year inflation would be around 140,000 US, meaning that the staked ETH required to be able to retire by 2030 in the base case would be only 188, and in the bull case would be only 56. And the cost to acquire that amount of ETH today is actually not that bad. And just for argument's sake, let's assume that the bull case for 2030 comes true. The price per ETH is 50K and it's a 5% staking yield. Well, if you needed 56 ETH then to be able to retire comfortably, you could either achieve that by purchasing it all up front, or by purchasing bit by bit and then staking it over the next 7 years. And based on that, how much ETH would you need to buy, let's say, today and stake to be able to have 56 ETH by 2030? Well, the answer would be 40, because that would be compounding over 7 years at a rate of approximately 5% per year. So if you bought 40 ETH today and staked it, by 2030, you would have 56 ETH. Anyways, that is a few different scenarios for how much ETH you would need to buy and stake to be able to retire completely off of the staking income alone. Let me know if you found this interesting, and remember, this is just a thought experiment, and by no means am I suggesting that anybody put all of their retirement eggs into the Ethereum staking basket. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.